Hi everybody, it's Geordie from Geordie's Cards here for Pawsome Stamps today, and I am bringing you this vintage inspired card. I was going for that kind of 1940s feel. I'm not sure I achieved it, but I had a lot of fun making this. So here is the beautiful image which comes from the Loving Thoughts stamp set. Absolutely adorable, beautiful big floral image, and I have coloured it all in, and then I thought, well, I will leave a little bit of colouring just to show you how I do it, because sometimes I get asked about my colouring. I don't consider myself an expert in any stretch of the imagination, but it's kind of nice sometimes to see someone doing their colouring. So I've just left one petal and one leaf of each part of my image to show you. So for my pink flower here, I'm using R89, R85, R83 and R81 Copic markers. As always, I always start with my darkest marker first. Now when you look at this, you may notice that the R89 is quite a big contrast to the R85, but you want that depth, you want that kind of shadow that it creates. And I'm doing two coats with this simply because of that big contrast, but you'll find that when you do the second coat, it all evens out really nicely. So I've just gone from darkest to lightest, my darkest part being towards the center of the flower and lightest towards the petal, end of the petal even. For my yellow flower, I am using YR23, YR21 and YR20. Now these colours blend beautifully together, so I found that I only needed one coat for this. So it really does depend on how your markers work together and how they behave, and you can take a look at it and decide as you go along what works best and what needs a little bit more work. So for my big darker leaf here, I am using G28, G17 and G09. Again, these are colours which are a little bit contrasting, so I do two coats with this one. It just really helps smooth out the blends and makes it a little bit more seamless when you do that. Sometimes you can kind of see the lines where one colour ends and one starts, so it's always nice just to blend those over. One thing that I do recommend doing when you're using alcohol-based markers is to go over the edge of the previous colour that you've just done with the new colour that you're using. This really does help to blend it out and smooth out those lines. So just finishing off that leaf, and then I have one more of the smaller leaves left. This is, I'm using YG67 and YG63. I really like this colour combination for leaves, and this is just a small area, so I'm kind of doing 1.5 coats. So I go in with my lighter one and then I just go back with my darker one just to add a little bit more contrast. I really like to get those shadows. That's what really makes an image pop. And I think that's really important when you're doing, especially things like this floral type image, which is a little bit more realistic than the critters I normally colour. So it's really, really pretty. Such a lovely, gorgeous image from Pawsome Stamps. So as always, I like to finish my colouring with a bit of gel pen. Now, I'm always a little bit nervous about doing this. I tend just to do kind of the bare minimum. I tend to go around where the light source is going to be, so towards the ends of my flower petals here. If you want to see a masterclass on using white gel pen, I suggest you go and check out Olga's designs from the design team. She uses gel pen like magic, honestly. It's amazing what she does with it. And I wish I could be her. I wish I could do it like she does. But any little bit, it does help, and it brings everything to life, and you can see it really kind of makes everything pop when you use it. So just experiment, play around with that, see how you go. At the end of the day, this is just a piece of paper and a little bit of ink, so it can easily be replaced if you're not happy with how things look. And practice is the best idea, isn't it? It's the best way of getting to know your mediums and what you're using and knowing how they work and what looks right and what doesn't. So that's really all there is to it. I did add a few little white dots just above the center of my pink flower there. I just kind of wanted to make it look a little bit more, I don't know, magical. I don't know if that's the right word, but I just wanted to add a little bit of extra something there. With my yellow flower, you can't see a great deal of the gel pen because the flower is quite light anyway. But I do just add it in there just to, when you're up close, you can see it, and it makes that little bit of difference. And then onto the leaves, adding it onto the leaves, just kind of, again, where that kind of lightest part of the leaf is, I'm going to add it there just to highlight that and make it stand out. And that is it. That is all done. And I really like how that turned out. So next up, I've taken a stitched rectangle. This one, I think it measures about 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. So smaller than a standard size card base. And I'm just taping off the edges of that stitching detail there. This is something that I like to do just to create a little bit more interest. It gives a nice border all the way around. So just being very careful. I have some pieces of masking tape which I had stuck to my desk and I thought I might as well use them. So I've pulled them up and that's what I'm reaching for when I pull them off. And I'm just laying that over the edges of that stitched rectangle, literally just where the stitching detail is. So it just masks off that tiny little edge all the way around. Once I have that down, I am going to pull out this gorgeous Moroccan Flowers stencil. I think this is my favorite stencil. I love it. It is so pretty and can be used for so many different things and just makes a really striking background. So I've lined it up there. I've tried to make sure it's nice and straight, and I'm pulling out the Stormy Sky Distress Oxide ink. I was going for a vintagey look, so I thought this ink worked nicely with that. It's kind of well, I'll tell you the idea behind it. I wanted it to look like the blue and white tiles that you can get. So that was the reasoning behind going with blue. And I just thought that this blue was particularly nice. It's not overly bright and in your face. It's just really lovely. Now you will see that my stencil moved a little bit. Oh my goodness, I always have trouble with stencils. But it's only a little bit. I carried on. I'm lifting up my stencil here and then I'm going to lift up my masking tape. And there is a little bit of a boo-boo where I shifted that stencil. It is a little bit smudged, but it's not horrendous and I'm pretty sure I can cover that up. So I'm going to live with it. So I've finished with my stenciling. I'm pulling out my image here and I'm going to work out what I'm going to do in terms of a sentiment. I decided to pull out the Sending Hugs stamp set because I love the sentiments in this, and I white heat embossed it on black cardstock. Now initially I was going to keep it just trimmed down to that kind of rectangular shape, but I felt like that was a little bit too, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit too much, a little bit too stark. And I decided to go ahead and fussy cut my sentiment instead. And I liked that a lot better. I thought it just tied in nicely and didn't look quite so obvious, if that's the right word. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I just felt it looked better. So I'm going to attach some foam tape to the back of my flowers here. I'm going to pop this up on foam tape just to give it a little bit of dimension. It is a rather clean and simple card, so it doesn't have a huge amount going on. Obviously, the image is the star of the show. It's beautiful. You don't need a great deal when you've got a beautiful image like this. But I just thought adding a little bit of height would make it pop a little bit more. So I'm just adding a little bit of foam tape to all those little outlying pieces just to try and make sure that they don't get squished or bent under. I struggle with foam tape. It goes all over the place, and I struggle to remove the backing as well. I honestly don't know if anybody else has the same difficulty that I do, but yeah, we get there in the end. And then my camera decided to cut off because my storage was full, so I had to go and sort that out. So I did miss a little bit of popping everything down onto my card base. I missed sticking down the sentiment, but you kind of saw earlier where I was going to place it anyway, and I literally just stuck the sentiment down with liquid glue. So here's my image going on. As I say, it's a beautiful large image. You don't need much else on your card apart from this. And there we go. My sentiments are all secured down nicely with some liquid glue. I decided to use a dark blue card base. So I cut another stitch rectangle from white cardstock to put in the middle where I can write my sentiment. And now it's just a case of gluing my front panel onto my card base and my card is done. Obviously, you need to be careful that you get this nice and scented. I always seem to mess it up a little bit, but hopefully it's not too noticeable. I think I got it fairly central, and that is it. I really love how this turned out. I did think about adding little embellishments and things. I just felt like it was enough on its own, and it's so pretty. I'm really happy with this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the Pawsome Stamps channel. We'd love to see you come back again. And here are a couple of other videos that you might like to watch. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.